Report. Joining us now here with Reaction, Fox News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel in the Army Reserves, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat. When you hear these massive numbers of people coming into our country, and Joe is letting them in from Syria, Iran, Russia, China, and China's buying up thousands of acres of farmland, thousands of acres of ranch land, thousands of acres near military installations. And you look at Joe Biden's policies on the border, giving up energy security, law and order. You see this chaos abroad. Tulsi, what has happened to the party you once called home? Is there any of this that you agree with? Because I don't think you do.
No, this is one of the main reasons, Sean, that I left the Democrat Party. It is clear, and it has been for some time, that they don't care about the safety, security, or freedom of the American people. And they have become apologists for these Islamist jihadists. And Sean, I got to tell you, for those like me, the many Americans like me who enlisted in the military because of the 9/11 jihadist terrorist attack on us, this is incredibly offensive. You know, I've deployed 3 times to war zones in the Middle East and in Africa. I know how serious this threat of Islamist jihadism is. The Democrat elite, they don't care. They don't care. They leave our borders wide open, which we know are being exploited by these Islamist terrorists. And they redirect our security infrastructure, our assets, our intel assets, not towards focusing on these terror threats that are coming through our borders and elsewhere. They're focusing them on fellow Americans. They're focusing them on people who they have deemed as domestic terrorism threats or extremists, also known as people who are supporters of President Donald Trump or conservatives. And I want to point out, really, Sarah mentioned this, but most importantly, we know that Iran has sleeper terrorist cells here in America. And unlike the Al-Qaeda, these terrorist sleeper cells have the access and capability and may have already brought in nuclear material into this country, waiting to be activated. And if used, could launch an attack here, right here at home, that would make 9/11 look small in comparison. So the graveness of the threats that we face right now, Sean, because of the failures of this administration, the Democrat elite, because they do not care about us, our safety, or our security, this is what we're facing.
I think, especially with the UN, Jennifer Griffin reporting that the next chair of the Human Rights Commission at the Human Rights Council at the UN is going to be Iran. Yet we fund most of that organization. The WEF, the WHO, with coronavirus. Why are we a part of these globalist organizations, number one? And number two, what should America's role be if Turkey, if Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Syria are all after one country? What should America's role be? We only have about a minute.
Well, I want to make the most of this time, Sean. You're right. The leaders of our country are not putting the best interest, the security interests of the American people first. The example you cited earlier about Turkey's Erdogan citing Hamas as being freedom fighters. Well, Erdogan himself is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Erdogan himself is a supporter of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Erdogan himself has murdered our he should have been kicked out a long time ago. But American leaders don't have the courage to do what is necessary. That's the problem.
I'm glad that I didn't see the conversation that Bree had with Glenn. I'm very behind generally on independent media, but I'm glad that Glenn has been taking the offensive against these fraudulent right-wing populists. That's another dub for RBN, CJ.
Yes.
Search my account, and this is. And
you call him out the most. I gotta admit, like this is one topic that kind of goes like I just don't even think about calling out the conservatives on this same issue, and you are consistently doing that on RBN at least.
Yeah. So like a lot of these like right-wing accounts will follow me because I bash Joe Biden Democrats every once in a while on Twitter. And then whenever I see like a MAGA name follow me, I'm like, I got you, bitch. Now that you guys see I'm not a Democrat, now I'm going to show you guys why you are frauds. And that's why I have done consistently. I have explained that right-wing populism is just white identity politics. And that's why it's funny because a lot of these same conservative-minded people who follow me, they're like, man, I like RBN, but they engage too much in identity politics. Like, no, we don't. We talk about the material conditions of our community, the fact that we're the highest homeless population, the fact that we're victims of state violence. These are material conditions, very important things about politics. But when you look at the right, what they engage in, like, for example, there would be someone who live in Kentucky, but all they do is tweet about the trans issue, as if as there's like one trans person within 100-mile radius of this guy, but that's an issue he cared deeply about. You know what I mean? Like, so that's their politics. And now the Israel issue is exposing that, because what is one of the examples I've been quoting as why the right wing is full of shit on free speech? I kept bringing up the BDS issue. Remember, CJ? I was like, you guys keep saying the right for free speech, but what about BDS? And be like, oh, whatever. Same thing with RFK people, John Fairman people, the people that try and pretend that Israel Palestine is not a big deal. I'm like, now that take age like milk, right?
Yeah, terrible.
That take like age like milk. And now you see this hypocrisy that the right had on Israel Palestine being shown in a big way, in exactly the way I've been calling it out. The only people who've been consistently for free speech are the communists and Marxists on my side of the politics. The RBN left, the Black Agenda Report left, Margaret Campbell, John Brockett. Like, we are the only people in politics that have been consistent on civil rights issues. You have Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They are teaming up by using identity politics, the weaponization of anti-Semitism, to sick the police state on people that are engaging in their freedom of speech. And the same MAGA right-wing people who pretended that they was freedom fighters of free speech have nothing to say about it. They're quiet as a mouse. They got 1,000 excuses on why we need to censor Palestinian activists. But CJ, feel free. I'll pass to you if you have anything you want to add.
One thing I do always give kudos to Bree about is that with all of our differences in strategy on electoral politics that we have with her, she has those guests that is needed to have where those conversations here and there. I'm not saying every episode she does, but it's like, it'll be like, oh, that, like the episode with Sam Cedar about forced to vote, that was a needed episode to have. She'll have those sort of conversations. There was another one, I can't remember, maybe the Cornel West one. This one we just showed with Glenn Greenwald, it's a must watch. You got to watch. And then to get to some of the other videos, like the Tulsi video, I want to throw this comment up, and I'll read it. It says, Tulsi, love you, but you must learn your history, Palestine, and then you will understand the ethnic cleansing that is going on, financed by USA on support of evil Israel. And Marvin Vargas is a regular here. I'm sure you recognize the name. So what's up, Marvin, comrade, a member of our community. I do have a little pushback because I have been one that's always been on the side of critiquing Tulsi Gabbard. I don't really take her all that serious.
I don't understand politician work yet. I literally don't get at this point. Like, it's the whole that's foreign to me.
I know it offends not offends, but I know some people like Tulsi, like Marvin apparently, and I know like Nico was somebody that supports Jimmy Dore. So now that I'm in this space, I know I gotta I have to change my adjectives. I'm still gonna have the same critique, but just change my adjectives about it, because to have her, this interview, Nick, to me is an illustration of how she's just doing shit for money.
Yeah.
That's what this is an illustration about. Go ahead if you wanted to also try.
Yeah, and I don't understand the era of still having even respect for politicians, right? Because people like Tulsi Gabbard, they make my skin crawl more than almost anyone else in politics. If you look at my old YouTube channel, I met Tulsi Gabbard, fam, in South Carolina. She had a political event. Fam, she met my black radical ass, and we got along great. Like, because she had like a sit-in. I explained it on my video, I'll be short, but we had like a sit-in, and she was just talking to people. So only like 8 people, I was 1 of 8. So I had a lot to say. And we were talking about Hillary. I mean, we were talking about war, and I was talking about criminal justice, because that was something I was like, all right, I like your criminal justice policy. And then she sounded like a radical abolitionist talking to me, fam. Because we were talking about how much we hated the police. We were talking about how U.S. Bro, when she talked to me, she sounded like a radical fucking Marxist. And then she recognized me like, yeah, nigga, good to see you. Like, we was very friendly and cordial to each other because she knew, like, it was clear that I, more than the average person that went to the event, I knew what I was talking about, right? So meeting, and this is why I know all positive faith, because you get this aura from Tulsi, like she's a very charming person, right? And then to see her flip like this shit is not, everyone have progressions, but this shit is not natural. To completely flip on all of your positions, like she went from being a criminal justice advocate, calling out the police state, to now she's saying, oh my God, the left want to destroy the police. Like, no, that's not a realistic flip. That is absolutely not. So if you're a Tulsi fan, you gotta realize that she's a psychopath of the highest order. I met her, fam. And the fact that she can pretend to be a radical leftist in my face and be convincing and then switch on a dime, that's a level of psychopath y'all can't even understand. And that's the average politician in Washington. Every single one of them.
At the time when you met her, did you even know her politics, or you knew a little of it, and that's why you
anti-war person? Like that.
Okay,
remember, that was when I was still more of a social.
She plays that role. It's so funny how she's known by some people as anti-war, and she's known by some people as NeoCon. It's so funny, but it speaks to her ability to flip, because if you mention the word Islam, it ignites something in her that I've you've never seen. But for whatever reason, she's against Ukraine. And but to me, if you're on opposite sides of you, like, to be for Ukraine but against Palestinians is such a bizarre position for me to understand from somebody, Nick. I just don't get the ability to. You have to have the ability to actually be blind about one of the positions in order to take opposite positions on there. But I do want to speak to this part here, and that's here at the end where I paused it, because this to me is sort of unhinged, and I'm using the word "sort of" just to lightly push back, not lightly, but to push back here. But listen to this.
Wait, Joe, with coronavirus, why are we a part of these globalist organizations, number one? And number two, what should America's role be if Turkey, if Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Syria are all after one country? What should America's role be? We only have about a minute.
Well, I want to make the most of this time, Sean. You're right. The leaders of our country are not putting the best interests, the security interests of the American people first. The example you cited earlier about Turkey's Erdogan citing Hamas as being freedom fighters. Well, Erdogan.
She's very offended by Erdogan, and he seems to be very offended by Erdogan. Now, when they say kick Turkey out of NATO, we're like, oh, whatever, kick everybody out. Like, we don't care. But from their perspective, Nick, that's an insult. Because NATO, you get what I'm saying, is this great thing, kick them out of NATO. And to me, that is pretty unhinged for Tulsi Gabbard, somebody who markets herself as anti-war, to be talking in this way about Turkey. Because, and this also speaks to another, like a separate issue. This also speaks to the problem that Israel puts United States in. Is that Jordan and Turkey, are two of our supposed allies, are like, nah, fam, we ain't fucking with this shit. We about to toss down some shit for this. The Arab community is coming together against Palestine, and I'm so happy to see it. But what do you think about what she's saying here about Turkey, and how they, from the point of view how they view NATO, how they want to kick Turkey out to do what? Because they want to fight. Have a military fight against NATO? Do they think they can't join a fight if Turkey joins? Is that some sort of rule that NATO has? Why do you think he's saying this? Or both of them are saying this? You're muted. You're muted.
This shows how inconsistent Tulsi's overall worldview is. Because one of the reasons why Sean Hannity hate Erdogan in Turkey is because Turkey is someone who, they are part of NATO and Western institutions, but they don't always support Western back policies, and especially on the positions on Israel. They've been the lone vote that blocked Sweden and Ukraine from joining NATO because he wanted to push back on how the Swedish and Kurd relationship. There are a lot of things that Erdogan did that pissed off the establishment. So of course Sean Hannity don't like Erdogan. But Tulsi, you as someone who's supposed to stand up against the Ukraine war, someone who's supposed to be anti-war, anti-imperialist, someone who used to have this veil of fighting the establishment, why do you have the same opinion on Erdogan as Sean Hannity? Now, I don't want anyone to get into twisted. Erdogan is not like a left leader. He's not
not at all.
Like humanitarian principles.
Not at all.
He's very self-serving, but he's no worse than the average Western politician working on behalf of his own personal interests. And sometimes he opposes the United States and NATO. A lot of times he joined the United States and NATO. For example, he was open to allowing Sweden and Finland join NATO, as long as the West gave into his demands. One of them was Swedish stop arming the Kurds, something like that. So
yeah, I remember that. I remember
they
that.
do those things like that. So Tulsi following the line of Sean Hannity just shows she's a complete sellout of the establishment, like we always knew she was, especially when you picking sides of the Republican. If you're going to rebel against the Democratic Party because they don't think they treat you unfairly, then you go on the radical side against the duopoly. If you're a duopolist one way or another, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, let the Democratic Party. Now a Republican, like, yo, are you probably a bigger clown than all of them? You know what I mean? How can you be a sweet summer child and then you volunteer to be a sweet summer child from the other side? So she, I don't. As I said earlier in the statement, I don't have much more to say because she's not even a serious person to me. Like, I don't cover Tulsi that much. Like, she's a clown of the highest order, and I say this as someone who met her. And obviously, I guess I probably should know better, and everyone should know this. But the performance that politicians put on, man, there's a reason why they get here. And I say this in my video, I'm like, man, it's crazy how these politicians are extremely charming. They win you over, and that's how she was. Like, when she talks to me, she's a radical leftist. She talked to Sean Hannity, she had a fucking NeoCon. Like, the term grifter gets thrown around a lot. But grifter is someone who says stuff they don't believe for money. That's what it is. So, like, people will call us grifters because they hate us. But how does it make sense to call us grifters when we fiercely advocating for our community and we're not making much money? But there are people like Tulsi who obviously sell out their previous positions. There's the entirety of the NATO left who sell out their positions for money and positions. It's the definition of the word grifter, a word I actually don't like to use a lot. But that's why I have
it's overused.
no respect for Tulsi.